Welcome to All In Together's Community Organizing 101 webinar. Today, we are joined by Maria Castro, a community organizer from Phoenix, Arizona, who works with the grassroots migrant justice organization, Puente Movement Arizona. Today, Maria is going to share a little bit about her personal journey as a community organizer, as well as some tips and tricks that you can use to begin organizing in your own community. Maria, thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. It's definitely a pleasure to be here. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about myself. When I was 12 years old, my mother, if you've ever met her, if you've ever seen her, you'll notice right away that we look a lot alike. But even more so with her younger sister. She and her younger sister, Rosita, look so much alike. A lot of people confuse them for twins. And whenever they're on the phone together, the room lights up. And one time when I was 12 years old and my mom got a call from my tia Rosita, mom was crying. And for me, that was something that was very strange. I didn't understand what was happening. My aunt had contracted cancer, and my mom had to make a very difficult decision on whether or not she was going to stay here in the United States with us or go to Mexico and take care of her younger sister. And because my grandmother had died of cancer, my mom didn't want to lose her sister, and she went. And when my mom and my aunt were finally able to defeat cancer, and my mom tried to come back, she was deported and denied entry into the United States. And for about 8 months, I had to take care of my younger sister, who was 5 years old. Because my sister and I are citizens, we had the privilege of going down to the border in Nogales and visiting her. But every weekend that we went to go visit my mom for 8 months, my little sister would cry for 5 hours straight as we drove back home. And that was something that marked me for life. Eventually, my mom found her way back to us. But when the legislation in the state of Arizona started to attack other migrant families like myself, it felt like this legislation, like SB 1070, the Show Me Your Papers law here in Arizona, was actually attacking me and my family. And it was at that point in 2010, after the signing of SB 1070, the Show Me Your Papers law, that I decided to start volunteering. So when the Show Me Your Papers law, SB 1070, happened here in the state of Arizona, I felt like there was a direct attack on my family. It felt like somebody was going to come and take my mom away from me. And that's when I started volunteering. I started being engaged in my community. And we employed different strategies throughout the years. This was in 2010. And we tried out making sure that Dreamers had some level of protection. And we employed the Right to Dream campaign all around the nation. And we eventually got DACA. And that was because of a lot of trial and error during the time of fighting for the DREAM Act. And then what we had an opportunity to do was to include parents. And in 2013, our organizations here in Arizona and across the nation, we started to talk about what deportation looked like with our families and with our parents, and those who are LGBTQ, those who don't necessarily belong to the Latino community, and expanding our horizons. And in August of 2013, I participated in an action of civil disobedience after doing a lot of research, after doing a lot of actions at our state legislators, at the state legislature, and then doing actions on Congress. We decided that it was time that if Congress wasn't going to act, that we were, and we stopped a bus outside of the ICE detention facilities here in Phoenix, Arizona. And that moment was very, very critical for me. I think it shaped a lot of how I organize now, because in that moment, when we were sitting in front of this gigantic, monstrous ICE bus, it wasn't necessarily about sitting there and doing a civil disobedience because it was the right thing to do or because it was the cool thing to do, but it was because of the relationships that I had developed with the people on my right and on my left. It was the relationships that I knew that together we were going to stop at nothing to keep our families together. It was the relationships that we had developed
throughout the years, throughout different campaigns, throughout helping and servicing different community members, that we were able to pull off this action. And it's a lot of the times we think of grand actions like the ones that we employed in 2013 and 2014, and we think that they're standalone things, but actually the amount of work and the amount of care that goes into the actions that we've done in the past is what shapes a community organizer. And what do I mean by community organizing? I mean respect and dignity in the work that we do. I mean respect and dignity for the people that we're working with. It's respect and dignity in the way that we manage our relationships with people. Because community organizing allows us to create political space, to create the change that we're trying to see. And you achieve this by doing so many different things, right? And I don't want to sound prescriptive. I don't want to sound like this is the magic key, or don't want to pretend that I'm doing this 100% every day. This is a practice that takes a lot of work, the same way that you go to the gym and that you practice and you train to build these muscles. And when you're dancing and you're trying to perfect a choreography for a recital, it takes a lot of practice. So I don't want to pretend that I do this every day, but this is something that I strive for. And when I talk about community organizing and building relationships, we do this by listening. I would say 80% of organizing is listening. And for me, whenever I'm thinking of an issue that I'm passionate about, I think about the people, right? The people that I love and the people in my community. And I sit down and talk with them. I sit down and dream about what are the possible outcomes, the possible solutions of what our lives can be like. And I would say maybe a good step for folks who want to identify an issue that or have already identified an issue that they're passionate about and want to work on it, I would suggest, have a house meeting. Have a house meeting with the people around you. If you're working on gentrification, maybe hosting a house meeting in an area where the gentrification is actually happening with the people who are going to be the most affected. If you're working on an issue on police brutality, maybe talking to the people who have experienced police brutality, and so on and so forth. So maybe having a house meeting and really listening, like truly intentionally having deep listening. And this is another practice that is like a muscle that we need to exercise, because it's about how we listen and how much care we pay attention to this that will inform everything that we do on any campaign that you're a part of. Because if you truly listen, it'll inform the research that you have to do to find the solutions. And honestly, a lot of this stuff, when I was first getting started, I kept thinking, oh, it's going to come from national. National is going to come up with this great idea. This national organization is just going to tell us what to do, and we're going to jump into it. And honestly, the best ideas were already in my community. Everything we need to win and to create the change that we need in our lives and in our communities is already in the community that we're participating in. And it's important for us to have a global understanding. We're in this era of wokeness. Everyone says, oh, I'm woke. This is the woke thing to do. And sometimes we get stuck in, well, I need to go to this protest and this other protest and do this other thing and this other thing. But what's actually truly important is to have a global understanding, which is where like the wokeness comes in. But more importantly is having a local and focused solution. This allows us to have tangible wins. And with our wokeness or our global understanding, It'll allow us to not make mistakes that have been made in the past. It'll allow us to make sure that we're inclusive of different communities and not be staggered in the moment of trying to be woke and do everything all at once. And so if you're just getting started, I highly recommend, again, having house meetings and talking to people who are directly affected. And it might be awkward at first because one, we're not used to listening to people, unfortunately, and the other, people aren't used to being listened to. And so I'm sure you can find on the web, or maybe through this series, other kinds of methods of actually actively listening and actively sharing with those around you. And one of the other things that I would like to mention is that don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. And this is one of my learnings that I consistently have to remind myself. Because of the families that we're able to work with here at Puente, I've grown such a deep and beautiful connection with them that I want everything to be perfect before we move forward. I want to make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted so that I can do my best with the people around me. And sometimes that does slow down progress, and I get stuck on that a little bit. But I encourage you, don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. All of this is a huge experiment. And I encourage you and those around you to have honest conversations and to grow deep relationships. And it's not just about a one-on-one, right? A lot of the times, again, sometimes these trainings can be a little bit prescriptive, but honestly, it's all about doing the work. Once you start having these conversations with people, maybe you'll identify some of the things that are our needs, right? And obstacles that need to be removed. And that's where you come in as an organizer. Your job as an organizer is to facilitate the process to better people's lives. And if that means accompanying someone down to the police station to ask for a police report, you have conversations with people and you tell them, hey, what is happening right now is difficult and is not fair, but it is also vital that we together work towards a solution. And you activate people that way through this process, or whatever it is that the topic is that you're trying to employ. And so again, I want to remind folks that everything you need to do to win and create the change that you want to see is already in your community. You don't have to go looking elsewhere. And so I want to thank all of you for allowing me the opportunity to talk to you a little bit. And I hope that we can continue to be in conversation. If you want to follow Puente, we are Puente AZ on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. We love to collaborate with other organizations, and we hope that together in our collaboration, we can win freedom for our families.